Hello, I'm Chris. I'm a collector of vintage science fiction paperback books, and these are some of the books I bagged in the first couple of weeks of November. And starting with a really notable find, every few months I head off with my friend Mill and we go to a particular town looking for secondhand books. And in Oxford, I found this absolutely fantastic copy of the Pocketbook of Science Fiction, edited by Donald A. Wollheim, published originally in 1942, so very early, but this is a fourth reprint in 1947, so still very early, and really in really good condition considering how old it is. And it's notable, as I say, because it is the first, as I understand it, anthology of science fiction stories in paperback, obviously, and the first book to use the term science fiction in its title. So perhaps historic, never mind notable. And some really interesting stories, as well as a really good introduction by Donald A. Wollheim. A number of great authors: H.G. Wells, Theodore Sturgeon, Robert Heinlein, Wallace West. So some really, really good stories there. So really delighted to pick that one up. Next, a Panther from 1969. This is Play a Piano by Kurt Vonnegut Jr., originally published in the early 50s. I'm not a massive fan, I would say, of Kurt Vonnegut, but always interesting stories, and this one sounds very interesting. It's set slightly in the future, where I guess what we would call now AI, but is described as intelligent autonomous, have kind of divided society into two groups. Productive engineers and managers, and the rest, who are used for kind of reclamation and recycling, or into what it describes, Vonnegut describes as the useless military. But there's a revolution brewing, apparently. So a kind of interesting book, and I particularly like the analog rather than digital robot in the image, which is by Alan Aldrich. And I know Alan Aldrich mainly from his work on Penguin science fiction. And the next book I found is this lovely Penguin copy of The War of the Worlds. And if you know, if you've seen my videos before, you know that I focus quite a lot on Penguin science fiction. There's about 330 or so books issued between 1935 and 1985, Penguin science fiction books. And I've got most of them. I'm missing about 20. And one of them was this edition of H.G. Wells with a panic top, as they called. I'm a bit of a completist, so I do have a copy already without the panic top. For those who perhaps don't know, is Alan Aldrich was very influential in Penguins, and kind of changed the covers and brought a lot of new designs on the covers. Alan Lane, the publisher, wasn't convinced and felt that the brand was being lost, and so he insisted on books having a Penguin book stamped on them right at the top for a while, much to the displeasure of the designers and illustrators and art directors at Penguin. So for a couple of years, a lot of the Penguin books had a Penguin book stamped on them. So there are some books of the time that are issued with this and some without, even though they're pretty much the same edition. And this has a Harry Willock cover. So yeah, really interesting. But one of the interesting things is this panic top has 3 and 6 alongside the panic top. And I've never seen a panic top with the price at the top like that. So if you know anything about that, if you've got a panic top with 3 and 6 on the top, do let me know in the comments. Thought that was really interesting. Next up is an author who's kind of very well known for her Penguin books, Penguin science fiction, but this is a much later New English Library issue of John Wyndham's Jizzle. It's very much, if you know John Wyndham's original books, they're very kind of sedate, the covers, quite a lot of the time. But New English Library has very much kind of dramatized this, gave it a kind of horror theme and put this out. So this is Richard Kaplan Day, who's the cover artist of this, and this was from 1974. Next up is somebody who I didn't particularly know was a science fiction author, and that's Patrick Moore, who we kind of know primarily from his early 60s, 70s TV shows, The Sky at Night. But I looked him up on ISFDB, and he wrote around 25 science fiction stories, mainly aimed at young adults, I think, or what we would now call young adults. Obviously trying to get them interested in space and astronomy. So that was a really kind of interesting find. So this is from 64, and don't know who the cover artist is, but it's got a really nice photo of the professor on the back cover there. Next up, we come very much forward to 1977, and this is a lovely edition of Christopher Priest's The Space Machine. This is the first paperback edition of it in orbit. A little bit faded on the spine, but a really great Chris Foss cover there. And I really like Christopher Priest's writing. Lots and lots of great books. And this is kind of an homage to H.G. Wells, actually, and he dedicates the books to H.G. Wells, and it's kind of very much in that style, and is in effect a kind of mashup between The Time Machine and War of the Worlds. And I got it last week, and I read it over the weekend in a couple of sittings. It's a real page turner. It does kind of get a bit slow in parts, but it's a great story, and I'd very much recommend this. Next is this edition of Recalled to Life by Robert Silverberg, and I've already got the first edition from 62, but this is a kind of later reprint, and I saw this for £1 or so. And what a great cover. Look at that really great cover. And I couldn't sort of leave it behind, as they say. And unfortunately, the cover artist, like many, is a bit of an unsung hero. We don't know exactly who it is, but a really, really nice job on this cover. And again, if you don't know this story, I'd very much recommend this story. It's about a corporation who discovers how to bring people back to life after they've died, if they get to them within 36 hours or so. And the kind of hero of the book is given the job of kind of releasing this news and dealing politically and in a PR sense, really, a media sense, with the kind of fallout of that, the kind of various kind of religious and political and ethical and philosophical reactions to people being brought back from the dead. Kind of interesting story, to say the least. Next is again a much later book. This is from 1989, Brian Aldiss's Cryptozoic. And the reason I grabbed this is that it's a VGSF classic. And for me, VGSF classics are the missing link, if you like, between the very early Golan's science fiction classics. So these were the kind of original Golan's classic books issued in the kind of early to mid 80s. And then, of course, they moved on at the end of the 90s, around the millennium, to these kind of black spined books. And this is, I kind of found this in the same place as the VGSF Classic. So there were about 20 of the original Golan's Classic SF books issued in this kind of livery. And then I think about 30 of these in this VGSF Classic list. I very rarely see these. I don't know why they're so, maybe they didn't print very many, or I'm just not looking for them. And then, as we all know, there are a fair few of these, 60 or 70 or so of these with the black spines that are always really very nice, but are getting harder and harder to find. So that's why I kind of picked up this VGSF, and I'm going to be looking out for a bit more of these. They're a lot more modern. Well, are they vintage? But they're from the kind of late 80s. So very interesting. Of course, there are VGSF published books, but they aren't the VGSF classics. Okay, next up, we have a book that I bought because of its cover. And they always say never judge a book by its cover, but I saw a picture of this online in a Facebook vintage book forum, and kind of fell in love with it, really, and had a hunt on eBay and found one just for a very few pounds. And it's kind of really interesting. So this is the Ballantine book, Transfer to Yesterday, by Isidore Hablin. And let me just double check. So yeah, this is August 1973, and the brilliant cover is by Bob Abbott with an E-double-T, who I've never heard of, but I'm absolutely loving that cover. Kind of looks like an early David Bowie in front of a post-apocalyptic New York subway station. And the book, as far as I understand, is a kind of time travel stroke post-apocalyptic story where somebody goes back and forth. I struggled to find any reviews of the story online, which is kind of unusual. I suppose it means I have to read it myself. But if you know anything about this book, if you've read this book, if you know the author, do put a comment in the comments below. So next, I'm really pleased to talk about this book. This is a kind of very early Frankenstein by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Obviously, the book was originally from 1818, I think. This is a 1967 version from Scholastic, and the cover is by Margaret Howlett. So yeah, I do like the early copies of Frankenstein. Are very nice and hard to find. I would always pick them up if I see them. Obviously, the very early ones. There was a fantastic Lion book from 1954, I think, which has an amazing cover, which I would love to find, but it's probably hugely expensive. But the reason, got diverted into talking about Frankenstein. The reason I want to talk about this book is, believe it or not, a brand new second-hand bookshop has opened in my town, Shaftesbury, here in Dorset. What a rare thing for a new second-hand book or a second-hand bookshop to open. Normally they're shutting down all over the place. So I was delighted to go in and support Dave, who's opened this shop. He said he's opening it for a few months to see how it goes. Mainly has modern second-hand fiction, but there was a few vintage books there. So I was very pleased to buy this and support that. So who knows, maybe secondhand bookshops are going to be like vinyl shops making a comeback and opening up all over the place. Let's hope so. Next, I've got picked up this, what's called the Early Del Rey. Again, this is a Ballantine from 1974. And I don't know, I've heard of Lester Del Rey. I've got a couple of his books. I looked him up in the science fiction encyclopedia, and it kind of said that he never fulfilled the promise of his early stories from the 30s and 40s. But this is a collection of his stories from the early 30s and 40s. So hopefully it should be quite good. So I'm going to dip into that and see what it's like. Next, getting to the end, we have, towards the end, we have two beautiful Badger books. Firstly, we've got The Other Side of Night by Paul Jarkin, with Eddie Jones cover there. This is from 1960. And this is quite an early one. It's Science Fiction 24. And I do love these Badger covers. Quite a lot of them are fairly battered and bent now, but this was in really good condition. Has a little 20 pence written on the top, but never mind. And I kind of assumed Paul Jarkin was a kind of pseudonym for Lionel Fanthorpe. I said in the last video Lionel Fanshawe, but it is of course Lionel Fanthorpe. But lo and behold, no, this is an actual author. And again, I looked him up in Science Fiction Encyclopedia, and he said he wrote fairly routine space operas, sort of, so damned a little by faint praise there. But this is an interesting story of somebody who's been revived from death. We're having a bit of a theme of that in this haul. And he's kind of captured by a cult who want to use him to introduce all sorts of nefarious activities from the 20th century, or the early 20th century, because this is set in the future where all those nefarious activities have been eliminated. But luckily, according to the book, Auburn-haired Ruth Melford, leader of the Psycho Police Force, intervenes and saves. So presumably that be she on the front. Lovely. And then in a completely different place, I found another beautiful Badger, another early Badger. And this is The Brain Stealers by Murray Leinster. Again, this is from 1960 and is Badger SF number 33. Fantastic cover by Ed Emshwiller. And I checked, I have a great bibliography of Badger books. If you're into early science fiction and like Badgers, I'd recommend picking this up. It kind of goes through all the Badgers, both the supernatural ones, the horror ones, and the science fiction, and gives details. And this cover by Ed Emshwiller was actually originally used on a Hal Ellison book in Ace. So it's been replicated here, but very nice it is too. The story is a kind of 50s pulp story of aliens coming and stealing human brains. Yeah, so it's not particularly one I'm going to read, I think, but lovely to have in the collection. And the final two, I always say I like to keep some good books for the end. Hope that you keep watching. So this is a beautiful copy, Sphere copy, Sphere Science Fiction of The Alchemical Marriage of Alistair Crompton by Robert Sheckley. And this is from 79 with a great Peter Ellison cover. And this book has been published quite a few times. It was originally published in 78. And so over the years, it's been published under two different titles at different times. So The Alchemical Marriage of Alistair Crompton, but also Crompton Divided, is the title. And so it's a little bit schizophrenic in that sense. But the story is also interesting in that it's about Alistair Crompton, who is a celebrated tester of psychosmell, perfumes designed to give psychotropic experiences. But he is a cured schizophrenic, and then different personalities have been downloaded into robots. And he is unhappy about this after many years. He's unhappy about this, felt he can't be fulfilled, can't be truly who he is without re-merging those personalities back into his own body. So he sets out to hunt, to look for those other individuals. So yeah, really good and interesting story. And then finally, I started off with a book I said I was really pleased to find, and I'm finishing with a fantastic book that I'm really pleased to find. This is Machines and Men by Keith Roberts. This is the Panther edition from 1974. And again, Keith Roberts is one of those fantastic British writers of science fiction. This is a short story collection. He wrote famously Purveyne, of course, and the Outlaw bookseller Stephen Andrews has done a couple of really great videos, overviews of his writing and his life that I would highly recommend. This cover is by Tony Richards. I'll just double check. Tony Roberts. So really pleased to have this, and this is going, I keep saying this is going to the top of my to be read pile, but this will definitely, really looking forward to reading some of these stories. Okay, so those are my pickups, my books I've bagged in the first couple of weeks of November. And so thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you in a couple more weeks. Bye.